Welcome to Season 8 of the Charity Matters podcast. I'm Heidi Johnson, nonprofit founder, lifelong helper, and your host. I've been interviewing modern-day heroes for over a decade with my blog, and I'm so excited to be sharing these inspiring conversations on our podcast. Join me as we learn the challenges and stories of innovators, entrepreneurs, and modern-day heroes who set out to solve the problems of humanity. Have you ever thought about how your space affects your attitude and how you think? Well, today's guest, Terry Grail, has. Terry is the incredible founder of the nonprofit Enchanted Makeovers, who helps women escaping domestic violence and their spaces and their homes. Her story is remarkable, and I'm so excited to share her incredible journey and our conversation about what she's doing to make a difference in our world. I'm so excited to have our guest today, Terry Grail from Enchanted Makeovers. Welcome, Terry. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
We're so excited to have this conversation. So before we get into the whole journey, which is really the fun part of the conversation, let's just start with telling our audience what Enchanted Makeovers does.
Well, Enchanted Makeovers is a nonprofit. We're national, and we serve women and children escaping human trafficking and domestic violence. We started 17 years in December, we celebrate. And we just bring everything that's precious. We believe that handmade is healing. And it's really transforming that sacred space, which is the bedroom for the women and children, to providing sewing rooms, we're big about handmade programs, which is the Capes for Kids, the doll adoption, and the pillowcase program. So we have multiple programs we bring to women and children.
I love that. I grew up with a mother who I am the non-crafting one in my family, but my mother could sew anything and was kind of the woman in town that everybody went to if they wanted an evening gown or a prom dress or drapes or pillows. My mother loved to sew. So there's just something so, and it's I don't want to say it's a dying craft, but in a way it is. And it makes me so happy to see that people are doing this, because it's such a special gift. It's such a gift.
Handmade is healing.
It is
so healing.
It is, and I'm excited to kind of dig into how you came to that, because I know a little bit about your backstory, but I know people in the audience don't, and we're going to get into a little bit more into it. But when you were a child, growing up, what were your role models, or did you ever see yourself in philanthropy? Are there's signs or breadcrumbs along our way that lead us to our path? And I want to take the audience down the path, but just curious about some of the early things in your childhood, maybe with sewing or crafting or giving back, that maybe when you look back, you maybe notice now that you didn't see that. Was there anything early on that you can see now?
My mother is she is the warrior. My mother's my role model. Yes. She showed us the importance of creativity, the power of our imagination. Yes. Going back to you said about as far as giving to your community, the community gave to us. We battled with homelessness, and it goes back. My mind is going right back to that piece of my mother saying, "Get all your winter boots on. We're going to go to," it was this little VFW, I think it was. They were having a Christmas event for children. And that time they call it the needy children. And we went across the street, and I remember going into this hall, and we had to stand in this perfect line. And the volunteers were against the walls. And the gentleman came up to me and said, "Come here, girl, pick out a toy." So that piece, fast forward to now, today, 17 years, that memory kind of drifted away as I grew older. But
Right.
that big piece is the core of Enchanted Makeovers, is when we change the way we serve, it changes the way we see each other. So there is
Right.
no perfect line.
Right.
Everyone stands side by side. There's no gawkers.
Right.
Everyone's next to each other. What is your name? What is
Right.
your name? And it changes just how we see each other. So I
That
that just went right to,
no, it because
yeah,
we're when we're walking our journey, we're looking forward and we don't always stop to look back, especially in the nonprofit space, because we're so busy and starting and running nonprofits, as you and I have both done, it we wear 50 million hats every day. And so
yes.
we don't pause and think about necessarily how did we get here
Mm-hmm.
and what was it on that journey that got us here. And I think it's so important to share the stories. I think it's important for us to reflect. And I also think it's important for other people to be able to look back at their lives and to see how the dots connect that can lead you to serve. And that's why we have these important conversations. So you grew up and you had obviously a badass mom, which I love, who
Yes.
was crafting and sewing. I had one too. My mom's from Michigan and she was a
Oh,
badass Midwestern woman. And God rest her soul, but she was the best. And your mom took you and your siblings and you guys left your family home and
yes.
went started an adventure and a new life. And so tell us a little bit about that, and then I want to get into how all the dots connected with Enchanted Makeovers.
Well, when we lost our home, my mother, I didn't know that as a kid. It
Right,
was just, we're just moving again.
right.
I'm like, okay. So we all got in that big, huge brown station wagon.
Which everybody had in the 70s. We all had them.
And she just went, and she always wore that do rag. I think
Oh yeah.
most moms probably did in the 70s.
It was like the Jackie O
Yes.
scarf look, right? Yeah,
Yes.
that was they all. My mom did too. They all did.
Yes.
Like the bandana worn.
Yes.
Now you would think it was a gangster thing, but it was very Jackie O
No,
back then.
no.
Yeah, they all wore those. Yes.
And we got in the station wagon, and she just started driving into city to city. And then all of a sudden we're pulling up to this house that's, the weeds are up to my mom's waist, and there's tires in the front yard. And she's like, this is gonna be our home. And I'm like, okay. And she goes next door to a church to say, who owns this home? And they say, well, we do. The deacons used to live there. And she's like, well, I need a home for my children. Do you think if I put a little deposit and then eventually I can own it? And they're like, yes. So I remember that showing when we went in there, the basement. I just remember looking up my mother, like just sharing the story of what she would do to this house because it was abandoned.
Right.
And my mother wrote a poem about the house. It's called The Promise.
Oh.
And it begins of her just laying her face against the front door and how she would take care of her and love her back to life and never abandon her. She's still there at the same house.
Oh,
Yes.
that's so
And it was
beautiful.
all just oopsie paint, clearance wallpaper. I would come home and she's knocking down a wall. And I'm like, what are you doing? She says, we don't need that wall. And it was just, I, I realize now that poem, she was restoring herself.
Right.
It was always about herself.
And just for people listening that are younger audience, you know, in the 70s there was no extreme makeover TV shows. There
No.
was nothing about remodeling anywhere. There were not contractors that just came and helped you. There was no one to tell you. You grabbed your neighbor, your friend, your kids, and my mom and my parents next door neighbor, those two women wallpapered together and each other's
Yes.
houses because that's what people did. You didn't hire people really. You just did it yourself and kind of figured it out.
Yeah. She's the DI queen that I learned from. It was like,
I
this is what
love that.
I mean, she went roadside and we would go drive her. Oh, look at that dresser. I can take, it was just watching and learning this amazing warrior of how I mean, she took, I remember this Christmas um event I had to do at school. It was a Christmas play. And I said, well, I need like the whole Little House in the Prairie with the hat
Right.
and the whole pajamas and robe. And she said, no problem. Went to the thrift store and she took all these sheets and made all this whole, I still have it. I still have that play
Oh,
outfit.
I
And she
love
said, no
that.
one's going to know any different. And look how great it is. And
I
just,
love that. Well, that so I mean it's just I think it's so important to look back at all of these moments that really get us to where we are. And obviously your mother was and is incredibly inspirational and very crafty, which I love that. But with all the people that I've interviewed, and I've been interviewing nonprofit founders for 15 years, hundreds and hundreds of them. Never ever was someone when they were a child, did they ever say, I want to be a nonprofit founder? No one ever in the history of ever has
no.
said, that's what I want to do when I grow up, ever. There's a series of things that happen, and there's a moment. Almost everyone can say the moment. Almost everyone knows their moment. And that a light bulb goes off, something happens, and all of these things come together in this undeniable space where you know you are called to act and you have to do something. So tell us about what that looked like for you and where you were in your life before and the moment when you started Enchanted Makeovers.
Well, I had a decorating business. So all four of my children, when they were full-time in school, I told my mother, I'm going to start a decorating business, but it's not going to be about decorating. It's really about giving women hope. Now, that was just residential homes. So
Wow.
I started off, and my first client was my brother's employee. So he said, I have keys to her house. She's up north. Just go and do a redesign. So I, did stuff in her living room. And I just remember just feeling that it was just such sadness in her home. I
Oh,
didn't know her story. So
right.
I said, I'm just going to leave a note on her countertop and said, I asked her, can I heal your home? So she called me
Oh,
the next day and she says, yes, please. So I started in her kitchen, and I was always explaining, now this is a new kitchen floor, but it's a new path for your life. And my mother even stepped in. She says, do you want me to make her handmade curtains? So it was,
oh,
yes, it was that whole, yeah.
I
So
love that.
by the time we're done with the kitchen, my client said, can you do my guest room? And I said, well, what story do you want told in that room? She says, well, my grandmother took care of me most of the time. And she ended up sharing her father abused her. And she
Oh,
said, every Sunday, my grandmother made me chocolate chip cookies and we had tea together. So she still had that teapot. So we had that.
oh,
I went on Etsy. I love Etsy. And I had these little chocolate chip cookies, fake ones made for her. And it was the teapot, the teacups, the little cookies on her dresser. It was the poem her mother always read to her. That was custom made to be put on the wall. This was a space for her just to meditate and
oh,
just think of all that. It was focusing on the light and not so much on the darkness.
oh,
So
beautiful.
before I left, I said, let's name your home. And she said, I want to name it High Hopes. So that was what
Oh,
she hoped for, what she was claiming for the future. So we had the sign hung outside, and a whole year had passed. And her client came in one day and he said, there's a house I always go by on Woodward. And it's so special. And she said, what does it look like? He said, well, there's a sign that says High Hopes. Then that's when she said,
uh,
I have to tell you about how this woman helped to heal me in my home. The gentleman, his name was David. And he said, well, don't you know what I do beside my, credit card company? I volunteer and raise funds for a shelter for women and children. Do you think she'll come and paint one wall at the shelter?
oh,
Well, I made that call to David in December of '06. He said, it's an old post office. The women stay there for a year with their children. Nothing has ever been done. So I said,
wow.
David, let me visit after Christmas. So it was January of '07. They gave me a tour of the whole dorm. Oh, it was the whole shelter. The last stop was the women's dorm. So once I walked up these stairs, and I always say, when you paint with the color, it takes just the same amount of time as a beautiful color as chocolate brown that was on the steps, around the trim
Uh,
of the window,
uh,
on the metal door. So
right,
I'm going up the staircase, and I had to push the door open with both hands because it's an old post office. Everything was
right,
metal and heavy. Once
right.
I got in the room, it was a dorm where 30 women stayed. with their children. And I asked, there was no divider, so there's no privacy.
Oh, wow.
And I asked the director, where's the dressers? She said, we use boxes for dressers. I said, where did the bunk beds come from? She said, well, they were donated from a prison. And I noticed all the bedspreads matched, but they were like the 70s. You throw up in the air and they land in the perfect corners.
Like the
Remember those? They
quilt.
were like,
Yeah, like those weird quilty things that were kind of
yes,
plasticky. Yeah, 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 yeah,
yes,
I do.
that was on the bed. And I said, well, where did those come from? She said, well, those were donated from a nursing home. So duct tape on the wall, duct tape on the baby cribs. Nothing could be repurposed. Everything was broken. And I stood there in that energy. That room was just filled with sadness. And I thought to myself, how can you go to bed
Right.
and dream and wake up with any hope when your environment is what you're feeling internally?
Absolutely.
So I took before pictures and I said, I don't know if there's anything I can do because I was so overwhelmed. So at that time, it was your camera. You're not using your cell
Right.
phone.
Right, 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 right.
So
Yeah.
I
We had
said to,
actual cameras. Digital
yes,
though. We were digital in 2007. We were digital
yes,
because I've lost a lot of my children's childhood from those areas.
yes. So I said to the director, I don't know if there's anything I can do. She says, I understand. So I drove home and I was angry.
Yeah.
Share with everybody. I said, God, why did you bring this to me? I have 4 children I have to
Right.
take care of, and I have this new business.
Right.
I don't want to think about this anymore. So I went home and I let it, I'm like, I'm not thinking about it. It kept coming up during the week, but I refused to look at those before pictures. So by the end of the week, it was so heavy on my heart. I'm like, you need to download those photos.
Right.
So the last photo was the bunk bed, the duct tape, the mattress was covered in urine stains. There was 2 pillows and no pillowcase. And on that pillow was polka dots. I've loved polka dots since I was a little girl. And when I saw them, I heard, trust me. And I just put my right hand up and I said, I'll do it. I had no idea how I was going to get the money, the volunteers. It was truly a leap of faith. And I went
never
back to
do. We never do.
you never do. No. I went back to the shelter a week later and I presented my design board. At that time, I braided my hair, so I had my little pigtails. And I share that because you understand they brought women from the aftercare program. So it was the transitional. So there was about
Right.
50 women in this chapel and they were leaning against the wall and looking at me like, who in the heck is this woman? And why is she here?
Right.
So, and I just started crying. I lost it. I was like that ugly cry. And I remember opening my eyes and there was a woman sitting in front of me and she had purple eyeshadow, blue nail polish, a butterfly necklace. And she kept saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then I look up and all I saw were girls. It wasn't women anymore. And they were crying with me saying, it's going to be okay. And that day is the same day as it is today. Is I knew I was walking beside women. I was not there to save anyone.
Right. Right.
That piece with the chapel and the polka dots is what changed my life, that I knew this was my greater calling. The decorating was just a baby stepping stone for something greater.
It's so fascinating to me because everyone I've interviewed, we all, and the sign, the part of the polka dot, there's signs, and when we're called to do this work, people always talk about this calling. And when I went to Catholic school growing up, and the nuns used to always say, "Oh, God's going to call you one day. You better ready to answer." And I remember as a little girl thinking, "That is so scary. I do not want to answer that phone. That is so scary. What does he sound like?" And I just remember, but the moment that I was called to start a nonprofit in 2002, 2003, I remember like the sign, the moment, the feeling, and that there was no question in my mind that I was doing this. It just all of a sudden it just is there. And for you, all of a sudden you're not expecting this. You're going through life, and then boom, there it is. And all of a sudden your life's made a total U-turn. We have no playbook for this. We're entrepreneurs. supposedly there's now a Nonprofits for Dummies book, but I don't, no one I know has read it or bought it. But I
No.
think it does exist. I've heard from other people it exists, but no one I know has read it. No one I've interviewed has read it.
Yeah.
But we figure it out because we know, for whatever reason, we know, like we know our name, that we're supposed to be doing this. We don't know why,
Mhm.
we don't know how, but we just figure out we're going to try and we're going to do whatever we can do. So talk to me about some of those challenges, because here you are, you have 4 kids, you still have laundry, you still have lunches to make, you are maybe trying to juggle your other business or not, and now you're going to switch to go to a model, or maybe not a model, but um, that is really the worst business model that exists on the face of the planet. Relying on the kindness of others is not always the most profitable and easy business model. So talk to me about some of those early challenges. What happened after that? Like, how did you move through that?
Um, well, I remember having nightstands in my kitchen, and I had donations down the hallway, in the basement, in the garage, around my bed.
Just whatever you could collect.
I was on it, it was full steam ahead. It was full steam ahead. Yes, I still went to all the Christmas functions at school. I was a chaperone for, my kids' events. Um, yes, my husband went to bed many nights by himself at 1. He'd get up at 1 and he'd say, "You're still on." If I could change things, yes, I probably would have. But that call was just so great that I'm like,
Right.
if you want to be on the train, you can. If you don't, it's full steam ahead.
Right. And I think what's interesting, and people sometimes, and it's not that you have to have, quote, the call to feel this, but our job is not only we get this calling, but then our job is to kind of share it with everybody else and say,
Yes.
hey, everyone, to your point about get on the train or not, you're like, hey, I have this exciting thing that I'm obsessed with. And people, though, want that passion in their life, and they're looking for it. And so they may not have gotten the calling, but they're like, I want what she's having. Whatever
Yes.
Terry's having, I
They've said
want
that
that.
before.
Right. Because you're so excited. Everyone's like, well, gosh, Terry's so excited about this nightstand. I want to get excited about a nightstand. And so it's contagious. And that's part of what our work is kind of making everybody else catch it, right? Catch that
Yes.
excitement. And that's really what we do, right? We build community and we build connection, and we try to solve problems in the process, and that's kind of how we do this work. So talk to me about some of those problems, besides going to bed at 1 in the morning, trying to juggle your kids and your
Yes.
marriage and life, which we all still struggle. Not everyone in nonprofit struggles with the juggle.
Yes. I in the beginning I remember going to a store to get paint. And I thought, if I could just share some of the women's stories, I know I can get the paint. Well, it wasn't that easy. So I went into one of this big chain stores, I won't mention any, and the woman rolled out on with her desk chair, didn't even get out of the chair, and said, "I don't have time for you." And I share
Oh,
that not to bash her, but to say that you're going to get a lot of no's, but
right.
that didn't stop me. It still doesn't stop me. So I got in the car. I did the ugly cry again. I went to another paint store, and the gentleman said, "When I'm done with customers, then I'll meet with you." That took about 45 to an hour of just waiting. Once I got up to the desk, he says, "Well, everything has to go through corporate."
Oh, geez.
So I'm like, okay. It was that one big, my largest donation, which was the second donation that came in. I was turning 40 that year. So I remember before my feet hit the floor, I said, "God, I don't want nothing for my birthday. I just want the largest donation today." Well, the week before that, I sent a massive, like, just emails sharing my heart of
Right.
why the women need a new mattress.
Right.
30 mattresses I needed. So this mattress company called me at 12, and he said, I'm in Mexico right now, and my wife said, have you checked your emails? He says, so your email pulled up. And I was raised that my father raised me. If you can help, you need to do that. He said, I can help. I'm donating all those 30 mattresses, mattress pads, and pillows. And that was my first largest donation. From there, there was no stopping. And the women knew we didn't know how long it was going to take,
Right.
but it was again full steam ahead. Really, it was
And
that
what,
ripple effect that,
right,
and I call these, and it's still this way, divine timing and divine appointments has been
right,
through the process the 17 years. So my very first client, you cannot go in and see her unless you have an appointment. She's that full booked ahead.
right.
She had a cancellation, and it was a 15-minute time frame. Her client walks in and says, I just need my brows done. She's like, okay, come on over. And she starts sharing. You have to know about what Terry's doing. She's working on the shelter. She needs volunteers. And she's like, well, what is she looking for? She's, well, these bunk beds, they're prison beds. Like, she needs all new bunk beds. And the woman was friends with one of the largest furniture stores here in Michigan. You can only guess. He shows up, the owner of the company, at the shelter with his limousine. I give him a tour, and not much is said, so I don't know where he's at. He leaves, and he calls me a week later, and he says, tell me about yourself. So I was just honest. I said, I don't buy your furniture. I don't know why I
Right.
said that. I looking back, I'm like, why did I say that? Because I was about repurposing.
Right, right,
So
right,
I was just being truly honest, this is
right.
what we need, but I would like to repurpose if possible. He said, do you have children? So I talked about my children, just about my life. And then it was
Right.
dead silence. And he said, Terry, I'm going to donate all the bunk beds and all new baby cribs. And that was a 15
Oh,
minute. So literally, that's how it's always been. It's divine
right.
timing and divine appointments. And I can
Because
only call that,
sorry
that's
to
God.
interrupt
I
you,
give God
but
all the glory.
when you're doing the right thing, the doors keep opening, which shows you keep going this way. And
Yeah.
the divine timing, whatever you want to call it, I believe in all of it, by the way. And you're on the right path because you weren't on that path. Your life was on a different trajectory. You were doing interior design, you were raising your 4 kids, you were just doing your thing. And all of a sudden your path got totally U-turned and you're like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what I'm doing. But these signs and these divine timing are showing you this is the right way and this is what you're supposed to be doing. And when those doors keep opening, which they do for almost all of the people I've talked to, including myself, that are the most unexplained things in the world, like this furniture owner, it's not a coincidence.
No,
It's
absolutely
not
not.
it's not a coincidence. So talk to me when, you're starting this whatever, 2007, you have young kids, you still have laundry, you're trying to juggle all these donations, you're trying to figure out how to rehab this program, you're doing a million things at once. What fueled you to keep doing this when it was really hard?
Um, the promise that I made to the women.
And what
I
was
made a
that?
promise. I said I'm going to do the best I can to transform your space. I had to fulfill that. There was projects there that were left undone when I was there, when I visited the first time. People had went in and they didn't even finish hanging the doors in the private rooms.
Wow.
So now looking all the way back, is I was on the journey of healing. I mean, I know that now is I had to stay on that course because the
Right,
little girl within needed it. She needed to have a voice and to have that transformation,
right.
just as the women that I walk beside.
And I
Um,
love that you say handmade is healing, but I also believe, and I'm pretty sure you do too, hearing you share your story, Service is what heals you.
Yes.
It's the serving the others that is the ultimate healing tool. It
Yes.
heals everything. I went to school and studied interior design. I was going to be an interior designer. I had
Oh,
never,
okay.
I never thought I was going to start a nonprofit that provides chaplains of all faiths at a children's hospital. Never in a million years, if you told me that's what I was going to do, would I have believed that ever. But that service healed and changed my life forever, and that's the path that we walk, and it's not the path we set out for ourselves, but it ends up being incredibly, we get paid in different ways. The way we are healed, the way that we find joy, the way that we have purpose, where most people spend their life looking for it. I'm not going to say it's been handed to us because it's really, really hard, even
Yes.
getting to it, really hard.
Yes.
Um, but once you have it, it's a special gift that not everybody gets to have. And you know that you have something other people don't have. And with that comes joy and gratitude, which I think other people strive for as well. So talk to me about the success you've had. You've been doing this for 17 years, Terry. I mean, first of all,
Yes.
congratulations,
Oh,
because
thank you.
the average nonprofit maybe makes it 5 years. I mean, and there's 1.6 million nonprofits in the United States.
That's
And
incredible.
it's
It's a,
incredible, right? Right? I could interview all day long. And I run one during the day, and I know I walk the walk, and I know how really, really hard the work is. I know. Um, but I also love asking the question about success. I hate the question of impact because we fill out these grants and we have to say I run a youth leadership organization as the day job, not the one that I started. And how you measure leadership, how you measure love, how you measure what a home means to someone. These are immeasurable things.
yes.
And when donors or foundations want to know, they want to bet on the winning horse, just like the furniture store man. He wanted to know you, you were authentic, you were real, and he wanted to bet on you because he believed you and believed in you. But what do you tell people your impact is? What would you feel that is? And it doesn't have to be a statistic. It could be a story. What is the impact to you of the success that you think that you've had in the 17 years?
Well, I was asked that recently about far as what is success to me
Right?
personally is that the 9-year-old said to me years ago, "You got this. You're a warrior. Move ahead." That's success. There's no amount of money can ever be given to me for that.
Right?
That's the answer for that. Um, Success is the women that have shared. Many of them have shared their stories with me, but two of them that always stand out. Her name was Donna, and she went through that whole dorm and the transformation. I mean, she was through the whole process of just seeing the murals being done. And I remember seeing her. I visited a couple times back at the shelter, and I said, "How you doing?" And she says, "I'm in the transitional housing now." And I said, "What is it? What? Tell me, what is that moment when you went into transitional?" And she said, "Making a grilled cheese sandwich and tomato soup for my children was just like, it's so beautiful. It's so simple." But to have, I mean, you only have a few women in transitional. So you're not sharing a huge
Right.
dorm. You have your own kitchen.
Right.
And I'm like, I just think that's just so precious. I just,
Well, and she found gratitude in something that we just take for granted. I mean, if it rains I live in LA. If it rains in LA, my kids are having tomato soup and a grilled cheese sandwich because that's just
yes,
what our family does on rainy days. And I've made a million grilled cheese sandwiches in my life for my three sons. But, people don't stop and think about what a privilege it is to make a sandwich, or privilege
yes,
it is to have the freedom to choose what you're going to do or feed yourself rather being fed by someone. The choice and the freedom
yes,
of that is the gift, right?
yes. And that little piece of what we did to transform that space to be able to be more successful to go through the program. That
Right.
was the big piece that she went through it. It wasn't the revolving door. Um, that stands out to me, that success. And then there was a woman that I remember when I was there another time, she came through the door, she ran down the hall, she hugged me, and she's, I have to tell you something. I said, what is it? She's, I now see the light coming through the windows.
Oh, yeah, that's success.
It's just,
That's it.
that's
Because
it.
hope is a gift, and you're showing them, and also, you're also modeling to them who they can be.
Yes.
You're not even thinking that. You're just thinking about, I'm here to fix this space, and I'm going to make this space beautiful, and you're going to feel better about everything because your space is going to feel better. But they're watching you in action as a role model, as a mother, as the little girl said, as a warrior, and as someone who cares and gives, and you're modeling to them how to be, which is the greatest gift of all of it.
Well, I have to share with the story. The women have taught me how to be a warrior.
Oh, how so?
Um, when you sit down with a woman and she shares, and she's so raw and real, and there's no way that you can bull her.
Right,
Um, to be able to tell me how, um, from 5 years old to it was like 18, her father molested her, and to go from that to, um, how do I, I now I have to numb the pain and go to drugs
right,
because I have to cover that up like it never happened.
right.
And now I'm here to rebuild my life. And she's the woman standing in the room that's making sure everyone smiles and laughs. That was the woman that stood there that said, can I share my story with you?
Wow.
So they taught me about authenticity and about courage. It's all those things. It wasn't from a networking group I went to.
Right.
So it is a full circle mission that we have so much to learn from each other. I'm not here to
Amen.
save anyone. Um, Teach me. Most of the time, I've been a teacher through this process, a student through this process, and then I share. There's times I have to be a teacher, but
I love that. So if
yes,
you could dream any dream for Enchanted Makeovers, and I'm sure you've already, because we're kind of our own worst enemies, right? We start out and we're like, we're just going to do this one shelter. We're just going to do this one thing. At the start of our conversation, you told me about all the programs you have. And obviously, when I started spiritual care with a group of friends, we were just going to help one child have a chaplain, right? Just one. And today there's hundreds of thousands of children 20 years later that have had chaplains. We are our own worst enemies because we keep raising the bar, like, okay, well, okay, now I've done this one, I just do one more, and next thing you know, and then I could do this. So when I asked the question, if you could dream any dream for your organization, I love it because I think people forget nonprofit founders are incredible dreamers and incredible entrepreneurs. And
yeah.
we're looked at kind of like charity, or I don't want to say less than, because we're so much more than a CEO, in my opinion. We are more than an average human. We are not superhuman. We are just very human people. We are the best of humanity in some cases. And we're not perfect. We are not saints, and I am not saying that either. But I love to hear what people's dreams are. So what are your big dreams? Because I'm sure you have them for Enchanted Makeovers.
Well, three of them already came true. So I've written three children's books. The third will be out this month. So
Congratulations.
yes, and it's all based on the programs. So the first one that I wrote and it was featured was the Kelly Clarkson show. That's when she featured the book. Yes.
Awesome. You're my second guest that's been on the Kelly Clarkson show. I
Oh,
had another,
okay.
yeah, my friend Maggie Kane was on the Kelly Clarkson show too. I know. Kelly is like, I'm like, is Kelly minding my show? But maybe she thinks I'm minding hers. So tell me
Yes,
about your books,
that was the
Terry.
doll adoption. So it was a volunteer that made dolls in honor of her daughter that committed suicide. Her daughter loved
Oh,
the Madeline dolls. So
oh,
she made these Madeline dolls, and we went to one of the shelters and presented them it was teen girls. She thought they were going to be younger, but they just fell in love with her story and started sharing their story about the loss of their parents. Um, they immediately went up to the table and grabbed the dolls and started naming their dolls and fixing their outfits. And her daughter loved lilies. So one of the dolls was named Lily. And she had lilies on her outfit, excuse me. And the one of the young teen girls, she said to Judy, I will take good care of her. And why she was part of that show is how much it is full circle, because so many volunteers and donors, they have a story to share too. So
Right.
the book is based on the doll adoption, but it's really about how much you are loved and how beautifully you are created. So it
I
really goes
love
back to God,
that.
really, the book. Um, so that was a big surprise. The second book is about the capes for kids, and that's the little bluebird who forgot it could fly. And all
Oh,
birds can fly, but this bird
right.
forgot. And the third one will be out in this coming month. Um, and that is the little porcupine and his traveling pillowcase. So the
Oh,
traveling pillowcase is about the power of our mind. So when I went to bed at night as a little girl, even with all the chaos, I could travel any place I wanted. And that was a powerful coping skill. And I used that for the first dorm. Um,
right.
I went to bed every single night and I visualized, I could see the women laughing and smiling. I never visualized how it would look. It was all based on how the women would
How
feel,
they felt.
how they felt. And I still believe in the power of really focusing on things, how they feel, more than so how they visually look. I still do that.
No, I love that. But and I think back about just being in interior design school in college and being taught that you need to think about what you want people to walk in and feel when they walk into your space, and what is that feeling that you
Yes.
create, and what is that feeling you give in your home, or the feeling. And I'm a big believer in that. And I don't do interior design anymore, as you can tell from my very messy shelves. But
Well, I have a blank wall, so
but I really but I really do think that that's so true. And I think and I but I love that, because that's what you're doing. You're helping these women heal by creating the feelings and the space that give them that belief and that joy and all those things you want them to see and to feel on their journey in recovery and in healing. And I that's so, it's so beautiful. So tell me what life lessons you've learned from this experience. I mean, I'm sure there's a whole other book, and obviously you've put a lot of the life lessons in your three books. But tell me about some of, you think, the life lessons, because there's a lot we learn when we do this work, and we get very wise pretty quickly sometimes. There's a lot of wisdom that comes when we deal with some of the biggest problems in humanity.
um, the lessons I've learned. Well, I've learned that I am a warrior. That's the first thing. I mean, I had that. I have to share something really quick.
Sure.
It was 2008. I went to an event. It was called. It was what magazine is that? Nancy Serrano, Country Living. Nancy
Okay.
Serrano was the editor for Country Living, and they did an event, and it was all about women that were big about handmade. So it was all these different products. I was only going there to get to these women because I wanted their product with my nonprofit to
Right.
able to
Right.
serve the women with, yes.
Right.
So I went there, and one of my team members went with me, and she did a lot of the photography for the nonprofit. And we were coming back, and we missed our flight. Well, if they changed the gate,
Okay.
and because we were talking, we're not paying attention. So I'm like, that's great. Well, that by that time I had a migraine. And I remember going up to the desk, and she says, we might be able to get you in at 1 o'clock. Now, mind you, we had the airport at 7 o'clock in the morning.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we went back up. She says, we can get you on the 4 o'clock flight. I'm like, okay. So she's like, okay, ladies, come up here. You're going to have the emergency. They go through the whole thing. I said, yes. I'm
Right.
like,
Whatever we
I'll
need,
take
whatever we
it.
have to do. Okay.
So it was the smallest plane. We're crammed in there like sardines. And I just remember telling myself, I said, I don't want to talk to anybody. It was that migraine that you don't even want
Right.
to talk.
Right.
So I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, whew, nobody's next to me. This is perfect. So I saw this gentleman walking down the aisle.
You're like, no, please
I'm
don't
like,
sit
oh,
here.
I'm going to be having to talk. So he sits down and he introduces himself and he said, what do you do? So I started talking about Enchanted Makeovers. And he said, well, I go to I minister to men in prison. And I'm like, oh, okay. So he started sharing about his work and his calling. And I said, well, I've been praying that God would break me into a million pieces and rebuild me. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, sister, he's already done that. It's time to be a warrior. So I
Wow.
share that story because my cousin's a pastor and he said, well, that's great. You only had to go to Chicago. I had to go all the way to Africa to get a message.
You got easy, even though you were delayed, you got your message faster.
So what a lesson. I mean, the whole thing of the time of missing something. And so,
But Terry, you listened, right? And you were
yes,
open, your heart was open to
I
hear it.
100% took it. I got off that plane and I sobbed and I'm like, I'm equipped. I can
Right.
do
I
this.
can do this.
Yes, I can do
Because
this because I
it
was,
can break you. It is hard.
yes, it is.
It's it's
But
hard because we carry the backs of other people on us and we feel so responsible for the people we serve. And it's not hard because, oh gosh, I'm tired. Well, yeah, you're tired. You still have laundry. You still have stuff to do for your own family. But it's hard because if you don't do that, someone isn't going to eat. Someone isn't going to be educated. Someone isn't going to have a bed to sleep on. Someone isn't, whatever the things are that we do as nonprofits, it's someone's really impacted if you don't do whatever it is you have to do. And so it's not like we lay our head lightly on our polka dotted pillowcase at night. We
yes,
we have a lot of people on our back when we go to bed that we think about, that we're privileged enough to serve, but that it can be heavy sometimes. It can be
yes.
heavy. It can be hard. So what do you
But
think that
I have
do
two
you,
more though.
okay,
The other one
okay.
is the second one would be is the importance of the power of prayer. I still
Right.
that is still my main um source to go to. And the third is I'm still a student through this process.
Oh, amen.
Yeah.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
That's what I say all the time. I'm like, I'm just here to learn. I'm just here to learn. When
Yes.
things come at me, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to be learning here? I'm sure there's a lesson in this. Um, I think that that's so beautiful because we are just students. And I think sometimes we go through our day and our list and we're just forcing through the list and we're not stopping and saying, what am I supposed to be learning in all of this? What is this
Yeah.
teaching me? What is this teaching me? And stopping and listening and hearing God and hearing the calling or the lesson or whatever it is and whatever you believe, whatever your belief system is. For me, it's God. Um, and what are they and what is being said and what are we supposed to be doing? Because we're all lost. No one knows what, none of us know what we're doing. We're just all doing our best.
Yes. And
We
I think what us being nonprofits, it's there's so many for-profit businesses that have so much to learn from us.
amen.
In the beginning, it was that begging. It was like, oh, I'll just take it. I don't feel that way now.
No,
Oh
no,
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 no, no,
no,
no, no.
no.
There's not a cockiness. It's just the thing is, there's a reason I learned all these things. There's a reason I built all these relationships for years. It built that you have large corporations now coming to say we want to partner with you.
Right.
So that's not a time to be, oh, please. No, it's to pull your shoulders back and say, I got this. And it, It's 17 years. There's no time to be hiding in the corner. Use your voice. And that voice is to give a voice for women and children.
Right.
So,
Amen.
yes.
Amen. Well, I am giving a talk tonight on the call to service, um, and building community, and have been reflecting on all of this because it really, and you're speaking exactly to my talk, because it is truly what we're called to do. And I have a slide in my presentation, which is that famous scene from Harry Met Sally, with Meg Ryan in the deli, and the lady leans over and goes, "I'll have what she's having." And I
Yes.
and I put it in the slide, and I thought I have to do it because there's a reason when you say that for-profits can learn from us. They can, because they want what we're having, because
Yes.
of that joy, because of that community, because of the connection, because of our invitation to be a part of something, and because of the passion which you have or we have as nonprofit founders that is contagious to other people. They want what we're having.
Yes.
They want
And
what
you
we're
realize
having.
how hard it is for us because everything's based on emotion.
Right.
We're not selling a pillow. We're not selling a car. It is a
It's a
story.
story.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a
So it's
story.
even, there's so much that for profit can learn from us.
Right? I 100% agree. And I have to say, and I love what you kind of said about the pity, or how, because I think it's a part of it is their perception, and we don't perceive ourselves that way. We know that
No.
we are CEOs, we are entrepreneurs,
Yes.
we
It's
are
a
CE.
business still.
It's a
The tax code's
business,
just different.
right?
And I think
Exactly.
so many nonprofits don't treat it that way. You are
Correct.
running a company.
It is a
It's
company.
like,
We are badass CEO
yes,
entrepreneurs, and we are raising money by telling stories,
yes.
and collecting kind of the best of humanity and trying to serve people in the process. And
Yep,
it's a crazy combination. It's a
it
but it's
is.
but there's magic to it. There's a lot of magic to it. So how do you think you've changed since you were just, and I will say just, but when you were an interior designer, mom of four, just doing your thing, to now? How do you think you've changed in all of this?
Um, I just speak what I want for the nonprofit. I think it might be my age too. I just turned 57. So,
I've got
um,
a year on you, my friend.
okay.
So
I just, my prayer in the beginning, I said, God, I mean, it was like I was in tears. I had my arms up. And I said, give me a voice. Just give me a voice so I can be a voice for others. Because growing up, I mean, I was the shy, very shy kid. I was bullied literally, I remember in first grade up to when I graduated high school. It was bullying
wow.
constantly. It was sexual
Oh,
harassment. So my thing is keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about it. And then being shy. So he has definitely kept his promise. And I would never think that shy girl would be speaking, would be, asked to be on a show. I give God all the glory for that. All the glory.
well, I think,
Yes.
Terry, you deserve an awful lot of glory. And I'm not saying God is not behind this master plan and who he picked to do his work, but he obviously chose very, very well in
Yeah. We have
in
job
choosing you.
descriptions. He writes his job descriptions.
Well, I'm sure he wrote. I haven't gotten mine, but I think he did a really good job on yours. I better ask him for mine and see what
Okay.
how we're doing, because I love your story. I love your journey. You've said it a couple times in the conversation, the full circle moments. There've been
Yes.
so many, that you came back to your roots, you came back to where you started, you're giving back what your mom gave you, and the
Yes.
handmaid is healing, and you're continuing to give. And you continue to push the envelope in new ways to create and to heal and to serve. So, I mean, it's just the most beautiful journey, and I'm so
Thank
grateful
you.
that you shared it. Can you tell me how and where we can support you, donate, follow you, social media, all that good stuff?
We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook. The website's enchantedmakeovers.org. And we love to collaborate. If you have a
Love that.
product, you know what, email me. Let's see how we can collaborate together. What is it you love to do? Email me. Tell me what makes your heart just go crazy and you can't, you got to keep sewing it or crocheting it. We want you to serve with your talent. That's it.
I love that. And then also tell me where we can find your books and when your book is coming out. Your latest book and your other book, your three children's books. Tell us about where we can find those.
Both books are on the website, but they're also on Amazon. So if you went to the
Okay.
website, the link would go right to Amazon.
Okay,
And the
great.
third book will be out in May.
Okay.
And I want to do a shout out because Country Chic Paint in Canada, but they also have retailers in the United States. They have
Okay.
partnered with us and did a collaboration on the Capes for Kids. So they named a paint the Little Bluebird. So they're
Oh, I
promoting, they're not
love
only donating
that.
monetary, but they're promoting the book, spreading awareness. And we have
That's
a lot.
it's
Yeah, there's a lot of companies.
beautiful.
There's a lot of stuff happening. I can't announce yet, but we have some large companies that I went for it. I used my voice and said, we've got to collaborate. They said yes. And I still can't believe it.
Terry, you are amazing. And God, you asked for God to give you a voice, and He did. And
He did.
people are listening, and
So
I'm just so great.
don't doubt you when the shy girl, the one that, maybe, like I said, I was called, I say this being sarcastic. We are not the needy child.
No,
We are not the poor child. That might have been our circumstance as a little child, but that's not our identity.
right.
So I always say, you know what? We start as a victim. We say we're a survivor, but when are we going to be a warrior?
Well, you are showing the world what a warrior looks like with a very big, loving heart. And
Thank
thank
you.
you for sharing so much of that with us and with all those wonderful women and children that you serve. So thank you for what you do. And thank you for being here today. What a true gift you have given us with this gorgeous story and incredible work. So enchantedmakeovers.org. And thank you, Terry.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for being a messenger.
You are so welcome. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Charity Matters podcast. I so enjoyed talking to our guest, Terry, about what it takes to start a business that truly changes people's lives. I think her comment about having a voice to use it for others was so inspirational and true. To learn more about these modern day heroes, or if you'd like to reach out to us, visit us at charity-matters.com or connect with us on Instagram at Charity Matters. If you enjoyed our conversation, we would love it if you shared it with your family and friends. And please don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. But more than that, thank you for caring, for believing in goodness, and for being a huge part of our movement. You are exactly what the world needs more of. Remember that together, we can make a difference, one small act of kindness at a time. Charity matters.